Hello and welcome back to the lecture on applied econometrics. We are discussing regression, and in this lecture we are going to look at some of the definitions that often occur when we actually explain a regression equation, and we need to sort of be very particular about what definitions means what. And we will talk about three definitions in this lecture. One is variable, another is parameter, and another is coefficient. Now, when we draw a regression line, if you remember, we actually have a scatter plot. Now, using that scatter plot, we try to minimize the errors and we get a line. So, let us say if I draw a regression line here, it will look like this. So, let us say these are the different scatter points on the scatter plot, and I draw a line that sort of minimizes the error, right. Now, when I do that, I usually explain a regression equation like y equal to something like b1 plus b2 x. Okay. We can, when we are estimating a y, we can write y as y hat. Now, what is this b1, what is this b2, what is x, what is y, and how sort of they are related to the definition variable, parameter and coefficient. So, we will try to explain that. Now, when you are actually obtaining a regression equation, we will see that there are a set of variables we are measuring. So, the set of variables here y and x's. So, these are the units that we are trying to measure. So, if I am changing x, what is the change in y? So, this x and y, these constitute my variable. Now we have beta 1 or b1, b2. Sometimes we will find a regression equation where we write, say, y is equal to 3 plus 2x, let us say. Now, when I have these numerical terms defined, who are the multiplicative factor of the x, or which is the constant term in the equation, we call them as coefficient. Essentially, the coefficient we get once we actually determine the equation, we actually get the values of beta 1 and beta 2 or b1 and b2. So, here b1 is 3, b2 is 2. So, the moment we actually realize these values, and if you remember when we spoke about the double structure of variable, we actually want to realize the values, and when we realize the values, we actually call them as coefficient. Whereas, when I write the equation as, say, as in the previous manner, y equal to b1 plus b2 x, then my b1 and b2 are yet to be defined. So, they are basically before you actually realize the regression equation. So, you do not have a defined value for b1 and b2. So, b1, b2 are undefined. So, when my b1 and b2 are undefined, I call them parameter. So, be very careful when you use these terms, parameter, coefficient and variable. So, here my as long as my b1, b2 are not defined, I call them parameter, but the moment we define them, we call them coefficients, right, and the variables are the units that we actually measure. Okay. So, change in x, how the y is changing. So, essentially what you have seen, so there are two you can have a slope coefficient, as I said, you can have a constant term here basically, which is the intercept. Similarly, you can have a slope parameter here b2 and a parameter for your constant term. Okay. So, that is how we will define these three terms, variable, parameter and coefficient.